Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. This is the Arlington County Board of Equalization hearing. There are 6 cases on the agenda. Presently, there are 3 board members present, and Mr. Hoffman is virtual. Mr. Yates will be joining us for the second case. The first case on the agenda is RPC 150666019 at 2901 Wilson Boulevard. Ms. Ross asked to withdraw this. I assume, Ms. Ross, can you have no objection?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay, I will move to accept the withdrawal. Do I have a second? Mr. Mendez is second. All in favor? Aye. So that is unanimous. That withdrawal is accepted. The second case is RPC 260011112, 3400 Columbia Pike. Ms. Ross is also asked to withdraw that. No objection, Mr. Chicas?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I'll move to accept the withdrawal. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Mendez, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that is all unanimous. Withdrawal is accepted. The third case that we're going to hear is RPC for Economic Unit 1700520 at 1550 Wilson Boulevard. Mr. McIntosh, you could start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Okay, hold on a second here. I guess I could share my screen quickly. Let's see here. Okay. All right, let's see 1 second here. Just want to make sure everyone can see this. Where are we? Wilson Boulevard. So this is the building. The building is 141,000 square feet, built in 1984. Class B office building. The assessment is $31.1 million at $220 a square foot. This is a situation that basically the building is 50% vacant. If you look at to determine our analysis, we took the actual income, and the actual income is about $2 million. This is the calendar year 2024 actual income without the synthetic or internal leases. So just to talk about the internal leases, this owner has about 20 buildings throughout the region. Many of them have high vacancies. And in discussions with the lender, what they ended up doing was master leasing across their portfolio to themselves space so that they could be in compliance with the debt to income ratios with their lenders. So, this owner has the ability to maintain these properties and pay the loans. However, if he did not, most of these would likely go back to a lender and be sold. But he's master leased the vacant space in the building, so it looks like the building's fully occupied, but it's not. It's really a synthetic lease. We've included a letter from Colliers International about the master lease, and basically indicating that it's non-arm's length and it shouldn't be used to determine a valuation for a property. And I'll just read: the presence of non-arm's lease in the office investment property presents substantial risks that can undermine the financial and legal integrity of the investment. Such leases often distort market rent values, compromise lease stability, complicate property valuations, and attract legal and tax complications. Additionally, non-arm's length leases may not survive a transfer or sale. For these reasons, estimate market values should be based on arm's length market transactions to avoid under or overvaluation. And here's a note from the owner basically indicating that this is the owner, Empire Lead. If the building were to sell, the internal leases would terminate. So again, the building's 50% vacant. You can see all of the space available for lease in CoStar. And so we took the actual income at the assessor's cap rate. The actual income in 2024 was 1.9 million, capped at a 10.178, gets us to a value around 19 million. There were 3 sales on Wilson Boulevard. The only three sales that we could identify that weren't, partial interest transfers or, other sales that we didn't deem relevant. They range from $123 a foot to $177 a foot. At $149 a foot, just taking the average of those sales, we're at $21 million. This particular 4075 was a distressed sale. However, it's pretty confident that this owner were not able to make the payments to the lender. This would be a distressed sale also. But again, contract leases, contract rent at the assessor's cap rate at 50% occupied, no new leasing in the building. I mean, it's been pretty vacant for a while. That pretty much summarizes our position.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, the other few comments that I'd make is, the assessor's worksheet originally had a number of errors in it, and then when they did their test, which we never seem to be able to pass this test, their square footage changed. So it went from 143,000 feet, and then the test case to 215,000 square feet, and then I guess another test back to 144,000 feet. That's the actual square footage of the building, but all the variables, expenses, and everything changed throughout that test process. Again, the vacancy is significant. It's not improving, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peralta for the county, please.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, board. For this case, we did see that it was a bit unusual with respect to the master leases. We did look at this case last year with the same understanding of those leases. We did not take into account those master leases and deduct that as far as vacancy is concerned. When looking at it this year, we did see what the overall I&E projected for this property is. If you see in the county's original assessment, we overstated the vacancy compared to that 2024 rent roll by 62,293 square feet vacant versus what was reported on the rent roll, close to 3,356 square feet vacant. That again is accounting for those master leases that are in place and are paying rent of about $41 a square feet per the rent roll. As far as that vacancy is concerned, in the original assessment, we equated 23% vacancy in the original assessment. Upon test, we're at 8% based on, again, the rent roll that was provided by the appellant and the owner. And looking at the gross potential income, we understated the income based on that rent roll when compared to that rent roll by $531,758. And then overstated the expenses. We're at $850. They're reporting $6, so $2.50 over what they are projecting for the property in 2024 or reporting in 2024. Overall, the NOI that was valued for the 2025 assessment was $1,734,368 more less than the reported 2024 I&E, and then so the resulting value was $31,169,300. Upon testing the information, we did make a consideration for those master leases, but after excess vacancy deductions. So we did account for that those particular leases in the below the line adjustments, but kept the 8% above capitalization to account for what was reported in the rent roll at 3,356 square feet vacant. In the test, we were actually closer to what they reported. We're within, I believe we're still 427,000 less than what was reported. And then we're taking the excess vacancy again below the line. So overall, we do feel that the test is more representative of the actual income that is being produced for the property. But we asked the board to confirm the original assessment at 31,169,300. I guess the pro forma, if you see in column G, they're valuing this property much less than what we have originally in the assessment at 19,185,380. That is all for now. We're open for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Mendez.
For the appellant, when was the master lease signed? Was that in effect last year as well?
Hold on a second to get to that lease. Wait a second. Take this. Okay, vacant space. Columbus Partners was when is the signing of that? Should have been 22. You can see on the rent roll, Columbus Partners across the building. And so all of them were signed the same day, April 1st, 2022. So when a new tenant comes in, if they're able to secure a new tenant, that lease comes off the rent roll and the new tenant goes into that space.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? No? Mr. Peralta, if you take a minute to wrap up then?
Sure, thank you. Again, the county originally understated the income, overstated expenses, and were actually $1,734,000 less than what was projected for the property or reported for the property in 2024. Upon test, we do feel that the test supports the original assessment, and we ask the board to confirm the original assessment. Thank you.
Mr. McIntosh, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's a picking apart of, applying, different variables, in multiple worksheets that the assessor has done. It's hard to keep up with. I mean, the reality is the building is 50% vacant, has been that way for a while now, and the prospects for new tenants aren't there. The actual income is based on the contract rent is $1.9 million. In calendar year 23, it was $1.8 million basically, and so it's not getting better. The vacancy is substantial. We have identified sales that in the marketplace in 2024 that support our position on the value. And we all know what's happening in the marketplace with office space. The demand is not there, particularly for B and C space. This is a B building, and that's all.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's just among the board members or folks. Mr. Hoffman?
As you guys know, I've studied a lot of these types of office buildings in Arlington, and we've all seen them over the years. I think, Keith, this package is really good, the way you've laid out the different valuation methodologies. Really hard to put a cap rate today on a 50% vacant 1980s office building. Frankly, nobody really cares about what the cap rate is on those buildings anymore. When they're valuing them, it's comps, sale comps, and more likely, what can you do with it that's not office, right? So when I go through the rent roll, this one's kind of challenged because you've got some long-term leases in it that could always, kind of spike any kind of conversion. So really, the best exhibit I have is your three comps on page 32 or page 5 of your packet, and those are really good data points, right? Comp one, newer building. Comp two, newer building, much better maintained. Ballston submarket, but all on Wilson Boulevard. Comp three, I'm struggling with just because it's kind of an immediate conversion, fully vacant. So I almost want to throw that out. And so I'm kind of, and I'll hear what everybody has to say. I would want to make adjustment to comp one and comp two because those are newer, better buildings with better occupancy. Comp three, I would want to either throw it out or include it, knowing that I'm not making an adjustment to one or two, if that makes any sense. So I'm kind of torn between the 149 a square foot as the average of the three, or maybe throwing out comp three and making an adjustment to one and two, but I kind of end up at the same place around 149 or 150 a square foot.
And what's the final value, Greg?
At 149, it's 21,019,879.
Other folks? Mr.
Yeah,
Mendez?
I certainly don't think the assessment up. It's tough to value this one because it's almost like the opposite of an arm's length transaction. When we talk about sales comps, we don't use, I sold it to my brother for X amount. So this is a similar situation. So I'm curious to hear what everyone else says, but I don't think it went up personally.
Spencer?
I think based on everything that we've seen, and I think, this is the same, I don't see any difference last year to this year, the same situation, same argument. And, we value this based on what's producing, what's the income. I know it's challenging because it's with the same situation. Looking at doing all the numbers that I'll take them up with, everything is moving in their favor. Undervaluing based on the calculations of income. So I don't really see a way to put an adjustment. I think it's really undervalued. I was brought to sit, so I'm okay with it.
I don't know if it's undervalued, but I struggle with this. I understand what Greg is saying, but I hesitate to take this property, which there are other properties that have this vacancy and higher vacancy, do a different type of methodology. I think it takes it out of equalization. I would agree. I don't know whether it's gone up from last year. But I'm not prepared to drop it $8 million. I mean, that's my concern there.
I applied, well, I don't know if this is correct, but I applied a 28% vacancy in column D.
Okay.
That got it down to 900,700. So I think that's probably where I am. If not,
And would you use 27%
I used 28%.
and still did the below the line?
And I did everything else the same.
And my only problem with that is you were double counting. No, with the vacancy below the line.
In column D, were there any below the line?
Oh, from column D.
Yeah, from column D.
Oh, I
yeah.
thought you took it from the test.
No,
So I was
from column
like,
D.
whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Hoffman, where are you?
27,900,000. So
Mr. Hoffman, what do you think of that?
I mean, it's under 200 a foot. That's a threshold for me that's just really hard to pass for high vacant office buildings. Because there's just simply not going to be a trade for anything. And we haven't seen one either. So everything's kind of in that 130, 150 range. So it's higher than I'd want, but if it's the only way to get a reduction, I'll vote for it.
Right, that's my only concern. Otherwise it reverts back to the 31 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'm gonna move that we reduce the 2025 assessment to 27,900,700.
Okay, and that's based on a 28% vacancy on column D.
Correct, yep.
Okay. I'll second it. All in favor? Aye, opposed. Okay, it's 3-1 without Mr. Honda. The assessment's reduced to 27,900,700 based on column D using 28% vacancy. Thank you. Okay, same players, different RPC. The next one is RPC 140, and let the record show that Mr. Yates is joining us now. So all 5 board members are here. RPC 14059-037 at 671 North Bleed. Mr. McIntosh, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Sure. Hold on, let me share my screen. Let's see here. This is a Class A office building built in 1998, 222,174 square feet. The issue with this building is that you've got a tenant in here, which is E-Trade, which takes up about almost half the building. Their lease doesn't expire until 2027. However, they haven't been occupying the building pretty much. And, the owners expect at the end of that lease, the building, they will move out of that building, which would put the vacancy at around 50%. And so going into the future, they just advised me that the lender sold the loan off at $37 million recently. No real impact to the valuation, but it just gives you an indication the willingness to get out of this asset at $37 million. Given the risk factors associated with that one major tenant that's in the building. They have done, however, some leasing in the building. And so what we did was basically take the actual income for calendar year 2024, which is about $4.8 million, and we capped it at the 10.2 cap rate, which got us to $47.2 million. Or $213 a square foot. We haven't really seen any sales that support anything higher than that. The assessments, at $273 a square foot. So between the income and this actual income and the sales, we think the property's overassessed. The net income in 2023 was about $4 million. But again, this is pretty risky for a potential buyer, considering, again, E-Trade hasn't been occupying the space. That lease, when it expires at the end of 2027, they're likely to be gone, and you have a building that's half empty. So that's the basis of our position. Income value is at $47 million. The sales that we identified are at $33 million. They're all Class A sales, similar to the subject, even newer. And so that summarizes our position.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peralta for the county, please.
Yes, thank you. For this case, we did take another look at the property and its income, and we did retest it. What's interesting about this case is when looking at the rent roll, we did find that some concessions were taken in some of the income that was provided. In particular, if you pay attention to page 5 of 78, you'll see the rent roll that I included there. International Justice Mission, they reported a $19.61 rent for the space. We believe that is with concessions. Looking at the actual rent schedule for that particular tenant, we do see that in the first year, it should be closer to $39 a square feet. And in the first year, $39.98 in the second year. So when looking at this, we did overall projections on what the average of the property, the average rent of the tenants in the property are. And with everything included, as reported, it's $39.30. Without that that particular lease, International Justice Mission, it's closer to $44.61. So when projecting for this property, we did make that change based on what we found in the rent roll in our test column F. So for the leases in place, we're at $42 a square feet. And then for the vacant square footage, we're closer to $40 a square foot. And then when projecting that, we're still about 200,000 less than what was projected in as far as gross potential income. Comparing that to the original 2024 income that was reported. And then overall, when we're looking at the NOI of the property, we did come up with an NOI closer to 6.4 with that vacant square feet income included. So when looking at the comparison between what was actually reported and what the county believes should be reported as far as that vacant square footage is concerned, we have a overall NOI of closer to 6.493724. You'll see that in column F, row 19. So when we cap that at our cap rate, 8.945 for a 2003 building in the county, we do come up with a value that is higher than what we originally had. Now, given that the appellant is putting forth a cap rate of 10.203, if you were to cap that new projected NOI that the county has put forth and what we feel should be the NOI for the gross potential of the property, then that using that cap rate, you still would be higher than the original assessment. So in looking at our cap rate, we did extensive studies on the cap rate. We did look at our individual Corpax report that we commissioned. We looked at other publications in the jurisdiction as well as the surrounding areas. And we do feel that our cap rates are within the range that was produced within that report and other reports or other publications that were produced during the third quarter 2024, as well as all the relevant data that we had provided to us. Now, again, we kind of lag as far as the data that we have at the time of, valuing the property, but we do understand that the climate in office is changing. We do feel that the overall rates that you see per square foot are more for the properties that are undergoing sort of a redevelopment into possible residential. We don't feel that there's enough sales to justify a cap rate change upwards of the 10.2 as the appellant suggests. But we had made great adjustments to overall all our cap rates. For this particular property, we changed the cap rate 120 basis points. And we did make that change. This year's assessment was 60 million, and that represented a 13.4% decrease from last year's assessment based on that cap rate and new information that we found for the property. So with that, we do ask that the board confirm the original assessment, and we're open for questions. Thank you.
Right. Thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, for the county, maybe I'm mistaken, but in column D, it looks like the NLA is almost 300,000 square feet, but everywhere else it's a lot lower.
Yes, originally we had overstated that income. I'm sorry, that square footage. I believe it was an adjustment where we actually added vacant square footage to the property. You'll see that the vacant square footage for the original assessment was 136,114, whereas in 2024, it was 29,757 vacant. And then if you go back to what we had in 2023, it was 79,118 square feet vacant. So that's where the error lied in the original assessment when we made the correction to the net leasable area of 222,158 in the original in the test column, and then 29,757 in the vacant.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, this building's always been unique. Keith, can you just talk about like the ownership structure of the ground or how that works? It looks like it's an air rights deal, and then what's
Yes.
the situation like? How does parking work for this ownership?
Well, there's as you can see, there's no parking income. They don't own the parking. It's an air rights deal, and that's pretty much it. You know,
So they own the
own-
air and the
Yeah.
building in the air over top of the theater.
Yeah.
And then whatever if a tenant comes in and says, I need to park 20 cars, the ownership just says, hey, figure it out with the Boston Mall or something like that. How's that work?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Peralta, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yes, thank you. Again, looking at the overall test for the property, we did project 200,000 less than what was reported in the gross potential income of the property. We did overstate the expenses that were reported. The reported expenses of $7.33. The original assessment had $7.50. We do feel that the test column is a more accurate depiction of what this property can produce as far as income. And we do feel that the NOI that the county put forth at 6.493724 is closer to what the gross potential net operating income of the property should be. Again, if you use the appellant's cap rate, we're still above what the original assessment is at 60,747,900. So we do ask that you confirm the original assessment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. McIntosh, you can take 1 minute, please.
Sure. You know, the test value is $326 a square foot. It's not seen in the marketplace. The cap rate used, you know, the CBRE cap rate for DC area is for stabilized is base of 9.75 to 11. That was first quarter 24. Second half of 24 is 8.75 to 10. A base of 8.75 to 10. You would add the tax rate to that, and you'd be, you know, just about 10.2 is what we used. We think that's a more realistic capitalization rate. But it's also the risk factor associated with the E-Trade lease. I mean, look at that lease. The lease is at 50. That lease is at about 50 something. Wait a second, where did that go? That I just had that open. Sorry, 1 second here. Oops, wrong case. Yeah.
Unfortunately, your minute is up. Can you just?
Yeah, so that lease is at $48 that was written in 2001, and that
Okay.
lease is going away in 2 years.
Okay, all right, thank you. It's just among the board. Mr. Penaranda?
Well, it's hard for me to make adjustments based on per square footage value. Each building, I think, has their own numbers and their own expenses and vacancy, so they're all gonna vary. Now, the E-Trade leaves, yeah, it's gonna come up couple of years, but like, the crazy we used to say here, you know, don't know what's gonna happen next year. They may read these. Yeah, so it's not gonna be a an argument, so I'm okay with it. So,
Especially with the reduction from last year. The appellants a suggestion of a 30% reduction, that just, I don't feel I'm convinced of that. Mr. Hoffman, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at it like if I was a buyer of this building, and somebody came to me and said, here's a cube of air with an empty building or 50% or 25% empty building above it. No parking, no ability to redevelop without the mall buying into that, which is basically means no ability to redevelop. And a tenant that's going to leave in 2 years, likely. And even if they don't, they're 25 to 30% above market in their rents. What would you pay for that building? And if I had to say what's the cap rate on existing income that I would pay, 25%, right? It would have to be a pretty big number. By the way, the county's going to eat $1 million of your first NOI in taxes every year. And if you borrow any money, forget about it. It's going to cost you 12 to 15%. So it's not a great proposition at 60 million. It's probably not a great proposition at 50. But even if I just said right now, today, there's 4.8, 4.9 million in NOI, call it 5 million in NOI today. A 10 cap is 50 million. I think if this seller or owner could get $50 million for that building, they would take that money and run. So my opinion is 50 million. I think that the appellant's probably fair at 47, but you know, this case and the last case, we should be patting them on the back and thanking them for not just handing the keys back to the lender and actually trying to make these payments, because they're both distressed properties.
Other folks?
I think those are some good points. It's amazing if you look back to 2019, it's lost half its value. But again, seems to be a unique situation to where, like Greg said, if it needed to be redeveloped, the mall would have to get involved, and it's kind of just sitting there. How we treat that now, I don't exactly know, because we've said in the past, I don't care about what happens in 2 years with the lease expiring. I don't care about the potential to do this or that. We're talking about the income today. So with that, I probably would just go with the county's assessment, but I think Greg is probably on something. I just don't know how to, be fair with that and equalize.
Mr. Yates?
I think the air rights and the parking and all the rest of that, it's been there all along. It's factored in already. I understand what Greg's saying, that this is, and it is leased. And will they probably move? More likely. But right now, they're still there. They're still going to pay a couple more years. And I think the rest of that is part of why the numbers have come down so much.
No, and again, similar to the last time, it's a slippery slope to say, okay, we're gonna take this out of equalization with how we assess everybody else. There's this at least it's coming up in 2 years. We'd be doing this across the board. She would just have a whole new policy. We'd be just looking at what's gonna happen in 2 years for this property. So I certainly hear Greg, and share some of the concern, but I think that's the reason that we see the decrease. So good with the county. Somebody might want to make a motion here.
I'll go ahead and vote that we confirm the assessment at 60,747,900.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second by Mr. Mendez. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's 4-1. That Mr. Hoffman, the county's confirmed at 60,747,900. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Do we have Mr. Eskew and Mr. Cheeks? Okay, next case is RPC 35009008 at 415th Street South. Mr. Eskew, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen quickly. My name is Brian Eskew. I work I'm a vice president with the Fortis companies. And we are the managing member of the ownership entity that owns 415th Street South, known as Marlowe Apartments. We acquired Marlowe Apartments on May 6th, 2024 for a price of $48.5 million. It was a broadly marketed sale process. The seller was Equity Residential, a multi or a national REIT, sophisticated seller. They hired Berkadia to market the building. Berkadia performed, an extensive marketing process. We ended up winning the auction process for the building and closed, like I said, in May of 2024 at a price of $48.5 million. The kind of main basis for me contesting the assessment is that the market value, the most accurate and truest form of kind of defining the market value is to have a publicly marketed process to arrive at the value of a building. And that was done in, within the within, a year from, now, but at the time of the assessment, within several months of when the assessment came out. And so really the base of our argument is, the market value was established by the market at 48.5 million. There were no unusual circumstances around the sale. It was a free and clear arm's length transaction. And so just to kind of walk through the numbers with the transaction, I thought it would be helpful for everyone to see. The trailing, and hopefully everyone can see my cursor here, the purchase price was 48.5 million. The trailing NOI at the time of purchase was 2.7 million. I'm a little bit new to this process, and when I was reviewing the memo, it appeared that the assessor was looking at an NOI adjusted, removing the real estate taxes, which is not typical in the market. Typically, you apply a cap rate to an NOI that includes all property expenses, including real estate taxes. So I also wanted to show what the NOI adjusted for real estate taxes, meaning adding back in the real estate taxes, what that trailing would have been, and that was 3.3 million. So our true cap rate we bought it at was a 5.6% cap rate. And then if you take kind of a cap rate on the adjusted NOI, adding back real estate taxes, because I'm not sure if that's a metric that the board reviews, it would have been a 6.77%. So then just to kind of get into the specifics of the numbers, we only owned the property from May until, we purchased the property in May. So we provided the income and expense for the property for the period from May through December. That is in this column here. And that period had an NOI before accounting for real estate taxes of 1.975 million. However, it appears the assessment used an annual NOI of 3 million. And, beyond kind of my market value contest, saying that the market value is established by kind of a sale process, I also would contest this $3 million NOI that was used for valuation. And I did some, quick math in the margins. If you annualize the income and expense numbers that we provided, basically take those 8 months and annualize them to represent a year, you would have an annualized NOI of 2.9 million. Again, these numbers do not include real estate taxes. So then you would have to subtract out taxes, which gets you to your true annualized NOI of $2.4 million. And then I used our 5.6 cap rate to get to an implied value of $43 million, which again is below what I'm requesting. I'm requesting it to just be reassessed at the value we paid for it, which is 48.5 million. And just as a point of reference to kind of as a sanity check on these numbers, I know that maybe you can't consider the April 2025 NOI, but I pulled our trailing 12-month NOI as of April 2025, and that was $2.5 million. So this 2.428 is, even though it's an annualized number, is probably a very accurate reflection of the NOI of the property. And then I just made a note to remind everyone that We paid 5.6% cap rate for the property, and that's why I chose to use that. I'm not sure this 5.79 cap rate. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a pre-tax cap rate or kind of a true market cap rate. And so I just went with 5.6, which is what we paid. So I don't know how much time I have left, but just in kind of conclusion, again, we feel that the best proxy for the market value of this property is a broadly marketed process, which occurred, within several months of the assessment. We purchased the property for $48.5 million, and we just asked that the assessment reflect that value. And then, we provide some additional support for why we think that is reasonable. And we think that, once we have a full year of income and expense, that will fully support, this type of valuation. So I thank you all for your time and open to questions.
Okay, thank you. There you go. Mr. Chikas for the county, please.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, board members. Good morning, Mr. Eskew. We're going to focus primarily, as Mr. Eskew did, upon the summary sheet. I believe that's page 3. Just to be clear, we did reach out and communicate with Mr. Eskew and request a copy of any fee appraisals that were associated with the sale. We were told there was none that were associated that could be offered, as they were client-based and not for the owner themselves, but for the lender. We did go ahead and structure our summary sheet to show the income stream historically as presented. As you can see, and as Mr. Eskew noted, previous years, 21, 22, and 23 were owned by Equity Residential. Again, using Mr. Eskew's word, a REIT, stabilized operator of multifamily throughout the country, if not one of the largest. So one could say that they were operating this property with due diligence and professionally. When we look at the summary sheet, again, even with only 8 months of income stream data for the 2024 year, one can see that the NOI that was achieved, again, in 8 months, is within some $20,000 or so of what was achieved for the entire year of 2022. Again, kind of using the same math that Mr. Eskew did, if one were to take the data for the 8 months displayed in column E, divide that out by the number of months in the year, and then extrapolate that to a full year, we actually came out to a projected NOI that would be within some $40,000 of what the county projected for January 1 prior to receiving the partial year 2024 IME. Again, while we do respect and recognize the sale that occurred, obviously it was some 8 months prior to the date of valuation, that leaves a lot of time for appreciation of that sale price. We do believe that it's a reasonable belief that this property would increase in value. That's probably one of the reasons the property was purchased in the first place, anticipation, principle of anticipation that current values future benefits. Again, as we can see, if in fact this property has already achieved, some 90+% of what was achieved 2 years prior, it is reasonable to believe that this property would continue its successful 2024 and into 2025. Location's fantastic. It's approximately 1 block away from Crystal City Metro, about a 4 or 5 minute block walk from Pentagon City Metro. Well located, well occupied. I believe we noted it was some 99% occupied as of January 1. Based on this information, based on the lack of appraisal to counteract some of the information we don't have, based on income stream and the success made in the 8 months of the 2024 year, we do believe that the county should be confirmed at a $51,831,500 valuation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Yates.
To the appellant, slightly in the weeds, but utility reimbursements were being paid as an income listed. Where'd they go on those 8 months?
So utility reimbursements are tracked at the utilities line. So our net, when you see there's that big drop off in utility expense from the prior owner's way of recording utilities, to our current property manager's method of recording utilities. They basically offset the utility cost with utility reimbursements at that utilities line. I believe it's line 12. And so that's where it's being captured.
That's kind of what I thought. All right.
Okay, other questions? No? Mr. Jenkins, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yes, ma'am. So again, based on the limited data we have, it does seem that they're off to a great start. Just 8 months of data has almost surpassed what was achieved in 12 months of income stream in 2022. We see nothing anecdotally that would suggest that the multifamily market has softened. We do see growth year over year, and we do anticipate that if we had the full year, it would be well within reason of our projection made for January 1. Therefore, we do ask the board to confirm our projection of 51,831,500. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eskew. You take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Sure. Just quickly, on the 2022 comparison, I would just note that it looks like the building had vacancy of more than 14%. So clearly that, I wouldn't consider that kind of a comparable year from an income perspective. And I don't disagree with the calculations of the stabilized income. I will just point out that Equity Residential is a fully vertical property management company that could run this property at a significantly lower cost basis than we can with a third-party manager. And I disagree with the 5.8 cap rate on an NOI that does not include property taxes. I don't know anywhere where a real estate buyer would buy a property, back out property taxes, and still apply a 5.8% cap rate on that. So I would love to understand that further. I know I'm probably out of time, but I just don't agree with that methodology. And clearly the market spoke when we bought it at the price we bought it at. So thank you.
Okay, thank you both. It's just among the board. Go ahead, Mr. Mendez.
Last year's assessment was pretty on the nose. And of course, if this was a sale towards the end of the year, I probably would be looking at it a little bit different. But it did have, 8 months to appreciate throughout the year. So really the question I'm asking myself is, did it really go up 5% between May and January 1st? I don't see anything to the contrary, especially if it was leased up 99%. As the data value, they are getting a 5% vacancy in column B. So unless I can see something else to adjust, I think I'm okay with the current assessment.
Yeah, it's hard to make a change just based on the sales price, not having more information on it. There's really no premium. We don't know what credits went in, what allowances or anything like that. So, and it's really 7 months of income that is being reported from May to December. So we actually count the rest of the months. I'm okay with it.
It's not the end of it, it's May, it's 8 months.
See, well, it's from 5/24 to 12/24. 7 months.
Oh, well,
May 23.
But it's in the May.
Why is it ending?
That's what it's showing. 5/24.
I assumed it first, and that's.
Yeah, I did
Oh,
it first.
Okay.
Right, so, my only concern is I heard two different methodologies of calculating that. I took the 1,197,523, which is for 8 months. Got 246,940 a month, and then annualize that, it's 2.963, which is lower than what the county should, because like I said, as much as we don't have the information, like you said, on the sale, we also don't have property that, in reconstructed 2022 was at 1.9. Reconstructed in 2023 was 2.7, and now they're saying, oh, well, it's sold for 48.5, and we expect it to be 3 million. I think that's a little aggressive. Again, I think the owners would love that. It doesn't change it much. I'm torn between looking at the sales price at 48.5, with the thought that once they have a full year, we know it's going up, or that annualized income drops at 51,179,000. It's just a slight reduction.
I broke it down a little more than that on the, trying to annualize that. Expenses are off by 500,000. Or almost 600,000. If you analyze that, I looked at the income, I tried to reconstruct that operating year. You know, how they're doing, managing. I think it's a sales price, and we're gonna see what that income is coming up next year. And that's where the county's gonna react.
Yeah, and I think this came up a couple days ago. I mean, here we've got a sale. that
Yeah,
The county's using to extrapolate their cap rates, assessing other properties, but not considering it for this property. I don't know.
it's gonna adjust next year based on what that,
Mr. Hoffman, where are you?
I mean, I tend to lean towards the sale price, but at least for the first year of ownership, it's close enough. Either that or, I mean, 2024, the assessment was pretty spot on. Like Johnny said, it was just a little bit over the sales price, but I would say freeze it at 24 and then reevaluate after a year.
Do this stuff.
No, the 2024.
Well,
It was just under 49 million.
It sold and just didn't go up in value for that 8 months. I mean, the residential market's been very strong. So I would probably vote against that personally.
Vote against one.
Vote against the sales price. Just because I don't think it just stayed at that value for 8+ months in this market. I think there was some kind of. I did like your methodology of going kind of prorating it monthly.
51,
Yeah, 174.
79. Yeah.
That makes more sense.
I mean,
That makes more sense to do that.
I don't want it to revert back to a vote. Are you okay with that, Mark?
yeah, because I do think it does adjust it slightly, but I don't know why we're not. Sales price.
All right, Greg, I don't think we have enough votes to go back to the sales price or to 2024.
Okay.
So it's just a slight
Slight.
decrease, but I will then move to reduce it to 51,179,000 even. And that is based on annualizing column E, capping it out. Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Mendez, a second. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. The assessment is reduced to 51,179,000 even. Okay, and the last case is RPC 17051021805 Clarendon Boulevard. Mr. Eskew, you can start with your 8 minutes on this property, sir.
Thank you. So this property is the NSTA office building, and then the Il Radicchio restaurant and the Roadside Grill restaurant. We own that entire corner between Wilson, Rhodes, and Clarendon. We have gone through the process of getting our 4.1 site plan approval, which we received in November of 2024. The 4.1 site plan approval has an approval for 179,000 gross square feet and 187 units over retail. While the current office building is vacant, the 2 retail parcels continue to be leased. We are in for building permits now, but the construction project has not been capitalized, and there is certainly some uncertainty around our ability to capitalize the construction project in this environment. We are continuing to plug forward as we are optimistic that conditions will improve towards the end of this year. but I just want to provide that context. We agree that with the methodology of valuing the property based on the total developable square footage in the 4.1 approval. However, we do not agree with the value that was assigned to that square footage based on recent transactions that have happened within the market. There is, as you all are sure well aware, a very limited number of land sales that we can point to over the last several years, and that's largely due to the challenges in the construction market. However, I've included sales comps from Walker and Dunlop as of 2024, and I would specifically point to kind of the last, 2023 and 2024 transactions. I know the memo did highlight our purchasing the property at an implied price of $78 per foot. But again, I will highlight that we purchased that property in a completely different construction environment. Interest rates, the 10-year treasury was more than 100 basis points lower than where it is today. And construction costs were arguably 20% lower than where they are today. So we could support that land value at the time. We certainly couldn't support this land value today. So I just want to provide that context for that comp. The average of the comps that I provided comes out to $55 per square foot. And that is what I used as the basis to come up with my requested value. I read through the county's implied valuation. They applied a $60 per square foot value on the retail. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. However, they applied a $78,000 per unit value on the residential component, which would imply an $87 per square foot value for the residential. And, I think industry practice is generally to use a per square foot number versus a per unit number, because the per square foot number factors in that some buildings might have larger average unit sizes. Our building in particular has smaller average unit sizes. So I generally would look more to a per square foot number. And then the final piece, which I didn't supply to the county, but I was able to pull it up before this meeting, as part of our 4.1 approval process, the county, Arlington County, ordered an appraisal for the easements and vacations. This appraisal was done on July 30th, 2024. Again, ordered by the county, performed by Robert Paul Jones Company. And I apologize for not supplying this to the assessor with my initial appeal. But if I go through this to, some pages here at the back where they have some comps and some views of value, they've selected two comps for our property. These were both 2023 transactions. $53 per foot, $45 per foot. The appraiser did the necessary adjustments for each comp and arrived at an adjusted value of 61 and 56.90. And I'm trying to go through this quickly just for the sake of staying under time. And so their final conclusion, again, this was, and this is the amount we paid for our vacations and encroachments as part of our 4.1. Their final conclusion was that the value was $60 per FAR foot. So again, much closer to the $55 that I requested. I think we would be comfortable with $60 per FAR foot as well. But we certainly believe that the value assigned is significantly higher than even where a county ordered appraisal came in, within, this was in, like I said, July of 2024. So again, I thank you all for your time and look forward to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chikas for the county, please.
Yes, ma'am. So we relied primarily for this case, actually, upon page 25 of 50. This would be the county's land study. Do please feel free to rely upon also page 43 of 50, which was Mr. Eskew's land sale comparables. And we'll just kind of look through those together. First and foremost, I hope the board noted a large makeup of the land sale comparables were sales that occurred outside of Arlington, McLean, Vienna, McLean. Of the comparables that were presented, many of these have not been approved for redevelopment. In fact, I believe, I didn't get to see it for very long, but I believe the documents that Mr. Eskew just displayed that he himself admitted was entered today only, was also for projects that are either PDSPs and so have not been approved for redevelopment via master site plan, a final site plan. So hold no density rights to themselves. Those properties that are in conceptual site plans like Roslyn 1, I believe the Gateway was another one he showed, have to go through the process to actually get these enhanced densities through legislative action by the board. In comparison, NSTA has gone through twice in, I believe, 8 years. It was initially set for development as an existing office, the NSTA building, and then retail set to the side. That was since after the purchase date was, went through a site plan amendment and came out with approval for 187 units and approximately, I believe it was 18,000 or so square feet of ground floor retail. As the board knows, is what we've done in previous years is we did look at those sites that were sold shovel ready, if you will. You can see them displayed on page 25. Again, they're broken out by if they're adjacent to Metro, what style of building they are. And then you can see the various metrics that are displayed per unit average of approved plans, Metro adjacent plans, non-Metro plans, etc. You can see that the per average sales of approved plans is 83,000 a unit. Metro adjacent is actually 87,000 a unit. The board also is probably aware that for January 1, 2025, the Department of Real Estate Assessment actually lowered the per unit land rate for Metro adjacent high-rise, mid-rise market apartments from 86,000 to 78,000 a unit. One could easily argue that was done in error and that these land sales actually support our original value of 86,000. At $78,000 a unit, one could argue this is undervalued. Again, based on the metrics supplied by the appellants, I think as he was quick to point out himself, just their sale price alone suggests a value of $75,000 per unit. Again, well within reason of where we are. The idea behind this legislative action of the county board is that it actually adds value to what's existing. They can operate the property the way it sits. They can sell this shovel-ready project, or they can let it lapse. And they can build what's been approved. So the department has been steadfast in the belief that as we minimize the existing improvements to a de minimis value of $1,000, all of the value is really just in the enhanced density that was approved through legislative action by the county board. That being said, we do believe that the county should uphold the original assessment as done through equity with other properties of like approvals for a value of $15,302,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Huffman?
Yeah. Hey, Brian, I'm looking at the site plan information that was included in the package, and it says there's 118 parking spaces, existing underground garage to remain. Is that part of the site plan where you're going to reuse the underground garage for the residential building?
That's correct. Yes. Although I
Okay.
will note that the underground garage requires significant cost to sort of refurbish it. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we are reusing the existing garage and tying the building into that garage.
Okay. And then the Robert Paul Jones appraisal, you said it was for the purposes of easement vacation valuation or something along those lines, but was there any bonus density or any type of bonus density awarded by the county using that appraisal?
No, so that appraisal was done, and I may not be describing this perfectly correctly, but there's certain elements of our site plan that required vacations and easements of county property. And so the county gets a third-party appraisal done for those slivers of land. And then we have to pay that as part of our proffers to the county. With regard to the bonus density, I could go find the value of the bonus density that was assigned to us, if that would be helpful. If you just take me a minute to pull it up.
Okay, yeah, if you could. I didn't know if I didn't get a chance to read the appraisal, so I didn't know if it was for both purposes
Yeah,
or
the
there's
appraisal was not related to the bonus density, and the bonus density process, you may or may not be familiar. I think it's generally, more of a negotiation with the county. But sorry, let me pull that up, how they valued it. That's it. I think this file has it here.
I may have it here, Mr. Hoffman. I'm not sure if Mr. Eskew, I can speak to what I found on the county minutes in preparation for the case, and Mr. Eskew could.
Sure, if you have it, I'm just trying to find if I have the latest file here, but if you have it,
This is the
please.
staff presentation, but it looks like it was commitments to earn additional density through furthering the goals of providing 10 on-site committed affordable units, monetary contribution for off-site transportation improvements, and achieving furthering goals of county's community energy plan by achieving LEED Gold and or Green Building Incentive Program criteria.
Right. No, that's that is correct. So maybe I'm misunderstanding Mr. Hoffman, but typically what they do is they assign a value to each square foot. And my recollection is that it was around $50 a foot, but I'm trying to find the
okay.
apology.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be in the same as what they're valuing the easement vacation because it's an FAR foot one way or another, right? I mean, it looked like the comps you pulled up are, what's ground worth per FAR entitled for multifamily, right? And that seems like that was the process that the appraiser went through. I didn't get it in the package, so I don't have the methodology and all that.
Yeah, I'm just looking here.
From board members? No? Okay, Mr. Chikas, if you take a minute to wrap up then?
Yes, ma'am. So again, as the board has done in years past, in treating these properties with equity, those properties that go through the 4.1 site plan process, give due diligence for multi-month process, spend lots of money on landlords, et cetera, through the legislative process of receiving this enhanced density of 187 units and 11,948 ground floor retail. We do believe that the county should be confirmed at a value of $15,302,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eskew, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for your time again. And, we just feel that at the implied value of $86 per square foot for the residential FAR, even as a fully entitled site, I don't think, I couldn't find a comp that would trade at that level. And, I would love if we could recapitalize it or sell the property at that level. That market is not there. And I think $55 to $60 per square foot is very reflective of the current market. And I think, the appraisal that I provided provides strong evidence of that. And, so we would ask that you all consider that for at least the residential component of the project.
Okay, thank you both. All right, it's just among the board. Where my session.
Yeah, the opinion was done based on the question. I forgot to ask, but there was suggestion unit this is because it was approved for 188 units. It's only says for 107, so I'm okay with this.
Slate one.
Was waiting for that.
Yeah, I mean. Greg, Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame we didn't get that appraisal because, I really need to dig into the methodology, the purpose. If I was going to validate, $60 a square foot as the opinion, because I don't know what they've factored in for the value of the garage structure that's existing to remain, I don't know if it's really applicable without like a thorough review. So we're kind of missing the boat on that. But and you guys are not going to agree with what I'm going to say. But what I would say is I would discount that 60. I think this thing's going to fall. And this is where I was trying to find the data point, because at some point, Fortis probably had another appraisal done for the bonus density, and that got supplied to the county, and a negotiation went forward. And if this got approved in 2024, we're probably talking about $65, $70 an FAR foot. So if I took 65 and then added back some value for the garage, maybe half of what the cost to build it would be, 118 spaces at 25,000 a space, then I'm just below the county. I'm at 14,638,600. But I can't make a really hard argument because I don't really have the information in the package to go on any of this. I'm just speculating, right? So, guess that's a long-winded way of saying I would reduce it a little bit if it was solely up to me, but I don't have enough ammo to convince anybody else to do so.
Anybody else? All right, then I'm going to move to confirm the county. 15,302,900. Second.
Second.
Mr. Penaranda is a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it is 4-1 without Mr. Hoffman. The county is confirmed at the site plan value of 15,302,900. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, that completes the agenda for today. Is there any other related? Nope. All right, then we will stand adjourned at 10:17. Reconvene next Tuesday, June 17th, 2025, virtually for all members. That's it. We'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.